Hey there! Today we're going to talk about the adaptive limiter. This is a professional look-ahead brickwall peak limiter that has been designed for both mixing and mastering purposes. It's now currently available in the engineering suite of SONAR Professional and Platinum. It features 4 different limiting character types: configurable lookahead, intersample peak detection, L.U.F.S loudness and K-Metering, an MP3 codec preview function, and even has real-time dithering options. Just so we're all on the same page, a limiter is basically a type of compressor that is designed with the purpose of limiting the level of a signal to a specific threshold. Now this is different from a regular compressor because a regular compressor will begin to smoothly reduce gain above the threshold that you set it at, while a limiter, quite literally, will almost completely, quote, limit any additional gain above the threshold you set. Hence the reason why we call it a limiter. And here we are, we're inside the mix session of the song you heard in the beginning of the video. Let's actually open up the limiter so we can point out the specific aspects of it. So right here we have the 4 character curves that I was talking about earlier. First we've got adaptive, which would be suitable for pretty much any style you might be working on. You could consider this the safe limiting choice that you can start with. After that we have the aggressive option, which basically does exactly what it says. It's going to add an aggressive and loud character to your limited tracks. The dynamic option will increase the transients to help preserve original attack and clarity. And finally, the pumping preset does pretty much what you'd expect. It adds punch and edginess. Now here in the center, as you can see, is where we're going to see all the waveform information in conjunction with peak reduction and the overall loudness of the signal. Right here in this option menu, you'll find the configurable lookahead feature. Now it has 4 different settings. I mean, depending on what you're mixing or mastering. For example, minimum would be good for mixing, while the higher settings will be more useful in mastering situations. This, again, is where the intersample peak detection comes into play because it'll help prevent clipping. In this same menu right here, we're going to find the real-time Pow-r dithering options and the MP3 codec preview as well. These are great because you can A/B your mix or master with the settings to get a good grasp of what your audio will really sound like after you bounced it out into those formats. Now up here is the input loudness matching option. This is great when you can enable and disable something like this. Basically, it'll bypass the volume increase when you are limiting, so you'll be able to hear just the dynamic qualities of what's happening to your mix and your transients without having to be fooled or possibly tricked and you're hearing something that you're not because the volume is louder. So this will be particularly useful if you want to hear the specific differences between the character types. Here's your A/B button, pretty self-explanatory, just swap the settings so you can hear the difference. The preset manager comes with a bunch of presets, and finally over here we have the K-Metering system with an option of opening a histogram. These meter scales are also configurable right here. One final thing to note in general is that the adaptive limiter is automatable. Now that we know more about this bad boy, the next question would be, that's great, how do we use it? So it's a good thing you asked. So let's take the drum room track here for this mix, for example, and see what the adaptive limiter is doing to it. Now what I'll do just to demonstrate what the limiter is doing is I'm going to really exaggerate the limiter here and change the character mode so you guys can really get a good idea of what the limiter is doing to the signal. By the way, there is another bit of functionality that you can see. Now if you click the right mouse button, you can move and adjust both the threshold and the ceiling options together like this. So for example, if you found the threshold and ceiling relationship that you like, you can keep it and move them together using the right mouse button. Anyway, let's start A/Bing these drum rooms so you can get an idea of what's going on. So as I went through all the different character types and really messed around with threshold and ceiling options, you could really hear the dynamics of the drum room and how they change with the various character types. Another way we can use the adaptive limiter is obviously in a mastering scenario. Here's the master of the same track we were just looking at, and of course the limiter is going to operate the same way as it did on the drum tracks, but there's one important feature we're going to use here that I did not use on the drum tracks, the input loudness match button. When using this, take full advantage of the K-metering scale and the L.U.F.S numbers here. The histogram also is really the icing on the cake, because between these three metering options and your ears, you'll definitely be able to dial in the limiter. Now, just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the drum tracks. I'm just going to go through the different settings and mess around with the limiter a little bit, and you can really get a good idea of what's happening.
I've never met a guy as gentle, real as you are. A guy much more deeper than most, who sees color in everything and feels sound through his bones. So I thought you believed in meant to be some chances, but I guess I'm wrong. I guess it's gone. Should've dropped you and move on my way. Don't want no tight downs. You don't need no sad sounds. When 6 months passes, but just hand me your heart now. I promise we won't fall down. Just trust us and living from now. You drove me home and dropped me off just like that. So cold. You let me on, but now I know I'm good on my own. Don't want to tie
Alright, that
down.
about does it for this quick introduction to the adaptive limiter. I did want to mention also, by the way, that if you click this gear icon here, and then documentation, this plugin has been detailed very nicely in a very nice document, which will help if you have any specific questions about the limiter's functionality that I did not cover in the video. Anyway, thanks a lot for checking out the video. If you liked this video, or you have any suggestions for videos that we can do in the future, please leave them in the comments below. To learn more about the adaptive limiter, visit Cakewalk.com.